Watch more, feel more. Dell.
Well, we have our first result in the Super 12s of the ICC Men's T20 Cricket World Cup 2021, and it's a game that ended up being a close contest. Australia have picked up their first points in a chase that wasn't necessarily filled with boundaries. No sixes in the Australian chase. Steve Smith got into his 30s, Marcus Stoinis got into his 20s, and that seems to be enough these days to pick up the points in a 2020 game in the UAE. Tom Moody, Ajit Agarkar, and Gautam Gambhir on the show to try and make sense of that innings. Let's go to Ajit Agarkar first up. Ajit, it ended up being a close game. And eventually, what? This is just more of the same, can we expect? 120 being competitive?
Yeah, I mean, can't quite understand. Looks like
Yeah.
I mean, this tournament it's 140 will be a winning score by the looks of it. I think it was a disappointing display of batting when you are chasing 118 with as much batting as Australia had. No real signs of demons in the pitch. Good attacks on both sides, no doubt about it. But still, I mean, that was a very poor international game, really, as far as batting is concerned. Quite happy as a bowler sitting here. Life for the
Hmm.
bowlers seems to be a little bit easier, but I'm sure Australia would have expected to bat a lot better and finish that game a lot more comfortably.
So is this then about just the teams that we're watching from, teams that are coming into this tournament without much form, batsmen that are coming into this tournament without much form?
Yeah, look, I think so. Absolutely. I think, the Australians were, coming in without confidence. They've had a backlog of T20 cricket over the last couple of years where they haven't performed. So they're finding their way as a team, finding confidence in this format. And they've got a number of players also finding form. But overall, both sides were very scrappy. Both batted poorly. It's easy for us to say from here, but we all felt that it was at least a 160 wicket, and I still feel that's the case. There wasn't a huge amount of turn. The ball seemed to come onto the bat, so strokes were, there to play if the ball was in the slot. But both teams are very hesitant with their approach.
Now, is that something that could likely be a trend, Gautam, in this World Cup, or is it just the evidence of the first game for both these two teams? What takeaways, what judgments can we form at the end of this one game between Australia and South Africa?
Look, we have to wait and watch. As Ajit just mentioned, poor batting. I thought that probably they looked very subdued. Aussies as a batting lineup, we've always known Aussies to be very aggressive with the bat, and they want to show that intent. Just didn't see that intent throughout the innings as well. Yes, you can understand from Steve Smith's point of view that he's someone who's going to anchor the inning throughout the Australian batting lineup. But then there are people like Mitchell Marsh, Glenn Maxwell, and Finch and Warner at the top. But the approach was very subdued because probably didn't take those risks as well, and probably the intent wasn't there. Yes, they lost two early wickets, but still they bat really deep. Aussies, Pat Cummins batting at number 8, Mitchell Stark can bat. So wanted to show some more intent, which Aussies couldn't do it.
So just after this one game, and it's a tournament where you've got to get things right immediately, Tom. But would you be, if you're Australia, would you be saying, yeah, that's all right, we've got the points. Steve Smith at 4 looks like it could work. If these are the sort of targets we're chasing, Marcus Stoinis in the middle order to finish a game, that's all you need from him. Would you take positives from this and say, yeah, we've actually got this right, we'll just get better?
Yeah, look, you can afford to be patient when you're winning. And I think the team can afford to be patient with a few of their players to recapture form. David Warner looked like he was just about to break loose. He started to find the middle of the bat, then found himself cut short with a good catch at point. Finch obviously didn't get going at all. So Australia can afford to be patient now. They've got a win on the board. That will give the team confidence. Now it's just a case of giving the individuals in that team some confidence. So the only way that's going to come is by them being backed by the management and by the senior players and just continue to believe in the brand of cricket that they can bring to this tournament, and they'll grow as the tournament unfolds.
South Africa bowl well, Ajit. My word, they field well. Is it just about batting better now?
Yeah, for sure. I think, we always knew they had a formidable bowling attack. Even Pretorius bowled quite well. When you lose early wickets, I'm actually quite glad that they did start with Rabada and Nokia. A lot of teams, even in the IPL, we saw Rabada being held back to bowl the 5th or 6th over. They perhaps didn't have enough runs, and That's one of the reasons. But clearly, those two attacking up front with the new ball is going to be difficult for most batting lineups. So that they've got a good bowling lineup. It's about getting the batting right. And again, probably have to wait a little bit and see if this is a trend and there is something in the pitches that is difficult to immediately get going or play big shots. Uh, but if it is going to be low scoring, the bowling is going to be even more in focus.
And just
Okay.
want to make one just want to make one point, Ron, that Abu Dhabi was supposed to be the best batting wicket
Yeah.
during the IPL, and suddenly it just can't change overnight. Probably, if anything, it would have got better. So I thought that the batting was very subdued from both the sides. There weren't enough
Hmm.
intent. Probably when you're facing a world-class bowling lineup on either side, you probably look to get 140, 150.
All right. Well, will we be talking about Australia and South Africa at the end of the Super 12s while we are talking about them at the beginning? We'll find out because England and the West Indies now take center stage in what will be the second game of the Super 12. Same group. Remember the group of death, if you'd like to call this group that. And speaking of captains out of form, batters out of form, Owen Morgan's walked out. He's won the toss at least, so he's done that bit right. England are going to have a bowl first in Dubai against the defending champions. It's a replay of 2016, the last time a T20 World Cup final was held. We're not sure if we're going to get more of that, sixes and whatnot. Carlos Brathwaite hit four in an over last time. We didn't get four in the game this time. So that's how this World Cup has started. But how significant are these tosses, Tom Moody? Is England win their first of the campaign?
I think the toss is more significant in the evening games than it is in the afternoon games. I think not that it's a guarantee, but there's a possibility that dew is going to play a role. And it is historically known that, fielding second when it is dewy, it's hard for the fielders and it's even harder for the bowlers. The ball skids onto the bat as the dew settles on the pitch as well. So batting becomes a little bit easier. So if you do have a surface that's a little bit inconsistent with its pace or a little bit slow, suddenly when there's a little bit of dew around, the ball can skid on into the middle of the bat. So we'll see whether this evening's match has got dew. But put it this way, I'd rather be winning the toss in the evening matches than not getting a chance to select what I'd like to do.
All right, fair enough. Gautam, what can we expect from the West Indies? Right? Are they the force and the threat they were in 2016? They have players that were even part of the 2012 World Cup campaign. But what can we expect from this time? Are they still a formidable team or are they an aging team?
Look, with the bat, surely they are. But I have got serious doubt when it comes to the bowling. And I'm amazed that Sunil Naran, who's had a fabulous IPL, why would you not include him in your bowling lineup? You've got Ron Paul, you've got back, you've got Dwayne Bravo, who's not as quick as how he used to be. Andrew Russell is suffering with injury. I don't know whether he's bowling fit and stuff. So probably the bowling will always be a big question mark in this competition. Yes, they will always have a formidable batting lineup with a lot of firepower. So they would definitely prefer to chase most of the times if they end up winning the toss. But then today, probably they will have to do the tough job against a batting lineup like England, who's got to be probably chasing the total.
Yeah, they're going to bat first. Andrew Russell makes an appearance here after not playing for KKR in the playoffs of the IPL. Ajit, we don't know whether this is Russell the bowler or Russell the batter, or whether it's an easier call to play him in the West Indies 11 than it was to play him in the KKR 11. Just running through that side, room for Dwayne Bravo as we expected. Akil Hussain will join Rampal and Obed McCoy as the outright seamers. And they do have the part-time option of Kyron Pollard if they so choose. So that's the team they've gone with. Do they need Russell the bowler in this tournament, the West Indies?
Without a doubt, from the looks of it, he's their fifth option along with Karen Pollard. He did bowl a couple of overs in the sort of lead up games or the warm up games, so looks like he's bowling fit. Whether he can bowl 4 overs of good quality remains to be seen. But if he does bowl, then it makes them more formidable because then it gives them a little bit more ball balance. And going forward, they could perhaps leave a batsman out and play another bowler if need be. But yeah, I mean, if he bowls, it'll certainly help the West Indies. You're right, and you don't quite know what West Indies will turn up, but this is a format they really enjoy. Every time a big game comes up, all the big batters turn up, but their bowling is very light this time.
There was one question, perhaps, Tom, on the shape of that top order, whether Chris Gale at three is best returns for them, or would they find room for a Roston Chase? They don't really have a spinner who commands a place in their 11. In the end, they've gone with Evan Lewis and Lendl Simmons at the top with Gale at three, no room for Roston Chase.
Yeah, look, I think early in the tournament, if Gale's fit, which he clearly is, they've got to go with him. There's no point carrying him on the bench in the early parts of this tournament, having picked him in this World Cup. They've picked him for a reason. They've picked him because they believe that he's in the best 11. And if he's fit, he's got to play. He has found himself settling at number 3 over the last 12 months or so. To me, it's not really his ideal position. We've seen him, conquer incredible heights in T20 cricket as an opening batsman, but clearly that suits the balance of their side with Lewis and Simmons opening the batting. To me, that's their real strength, is their batting, their top order, and their power in the middle order that's really capped off when you look at names like Pooran, Pollard and Russell at 5, 6 and 7. Any team would dream of that type of power to be able to see a game home. But what we're going to be able to see unfold, whether it be tonight and as this tournament unfolds, is that how does that power game match up against, the spin that will be on offer?
Will this be a tournament for the power game, though, Gautam? Or will the power game need to be tweaked if you are the West Indies? You've backed Pooran, Hetmeyer, guys that you want continue playing the power game, Russell too. But can that be modified to suit what looks like a different sort of tournament?
Look, you need to have a power of West Indian. We said in these conditions that people like Andrew Russell, people like Karan Pollard, even for that matter, even Nicholas Pooran or Shimron Hetmeyer. If you see this batting lineup, they can probably do well in any conditions. But there are not a lot of teams who've got this kind of a firepower. So I don't think so. Grounds do matter to them, or even the surface do matter to them, to be honest, because if it's in their arc, it's absolutely out of the park. But then again, I think depending on the opposition bowling as well, when you've got people like Timal Mills or Mark Wood bowling at 90 plus miles, it's not going to be easy. Yeah, but then yes, you can expect that firework from the West Indians, but then we have to wait and watch, to be honest, because Karan Pollard wasn't in the best of form. Russell hasn't played any cricket leading up to this World Cup. Nicholas Pooran was badly out of form. So you got to be in good form to play that power game as well. You can have the power, you can have the ability, but then you need to have that form as well, which unfortunately these three guys who are the power hitters are lacking.
All right. Pollard is slotted to bat in at 6. Andre Russell at 7. Ajit, I think this is going to be one of those tournaments where, again, we're going to keep discussing when we'd like to see Pollard bat, Russell bat. Bravo for all his worth, won't get a bat, and we'll probably be discussing. That seems to be a trend with these West Indies teams.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure they'll be a bit more flexible. There's no doubt about it, depending on how they go at the top. I mean, Chris Gale, number 3. I'm not quite sure how Chris Gale is going to play because his running between wickets is not as it used to be. So whether he's just going to come and take on the bowling remains to be seen. Pollard's the one who's changed his game quite a bit over the last 2, maybe 3 years. Bats situations a lot more than perhaps Andre Russell or even a Nicholas Pooran. Nicholas Pooran seems to want to hit every ball. I mean, if Nicholas Pooran bats well for the West Indies, he could single-handedly win them the tournament. That's how talented he is. But Pollard's the one who bats differently. But when he's captain, I don't think he really pushes himself up further up than 6. But I'm sure they'll have a lot more flexibility after that number 3, depending on what the situation is.
Now, what about England? What do we expect from England, Tom Moody, as we look at the 11 that they've gone in with? They had a few selection calls to make as well. Rowan Butler seems to be the way to go at the top. David Malan, Johnny Bairstow, Liam Livingston, Owen Morgan, again, woefully out of form. Moeen Ali's in that team. They've gone for Chris Wokes ahead of David Willey. There's Jordan, Adil Rashid, and Tymel Mills that wrap up that 11 side. What are we expecting from England from this tournament?
Well, we just talked about the power game that the West Indies bring, but you look at that England lineup. That's something to admire as well. They've got the power game. Yeah, they've got maybe 1 or 2 players that are out of form, but I think there's not too many teams in this tournament that are going to have every single one of their top 7 in form. So we're better off really talking about the game changes they do have. And the partnership of Roy and Butler at the top of the order is a formidable one. Yep, the most talked about T20 international batsman in the world, Dawood Malan at 3, seems to always get his position questioned, but he's got more runs than anyone else at a better average than anyone else with a very, very handsome strike rate. So he's really the settled anchor at 3. Bairstow, beautifully positioned at 4. He's shown the flexibility to be able to bat at the top of the order or in the middle of the order. Look, this is a good side. This is a very good side. A lot of people haven't seen a lot of Liam Livingston yet, but he's got a seriously good power game as well. Yeah, and they've got some good all-round talent there. Moeen Ali, Wokes, and Jordan. They're three quality all-rounders that all have got capabilities of bowling their full set of 4 overs. So this is a good side, and it's good to see the story of Tymal Mills coming back into the England setup after being, I suppose, on the outer for a few years. But he's fought his way back. He's got over his fitness issues. He's developed his game a little bit further than what it was when he first burst onto the scene for Royal Challengers Bangalore. How many years ago was that? About 4 years ago. So he's a good addition to that team as well.
Yeah, 3.5 years since Tamil Mills last played a T20 international for England. If I bring those lineups back, though, Gautam spoke of the West Indies and said, looks a formidable batting lineup. Bowling is a concern. What would you say that? Would you say the same about England to a degree? Chris Wokes, Chris Jordan, the absence of Jofra Archer and Ben Stokes. Does this team have the bowling?
Look, I reckon I would have gone with Mark Wood in place of Chris Jordan. I wanted pace with Tamal Mills, who can bowl 90 plus, and Mark Wood, especially against a batting lineup like West Indies. Because if you have pace, you can actually rattle them big time. People like Chris Gill, Andrew Russell doesn't like pace. For that matter, even Karen Pollard doesn't like pace as well. So probably I would have gone with those two. Yes, Chris Jordan has done a really good job bowling in the death and stuff, but pace is pace. When you've got two bowlers who can bowl 90 plus, you can actually rattle any opposition.
Mark Wood, tempted? Would you have played him ahead?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know whether I'd have played him. Looking at that team, you just feel they've gone for Chris Jordan only because he can bowl towards the end of the innings. With Tymal Mills, Chris Wokes perhaps doesn't do that as much, and then it only leaves Tymal Mills to do that. If Mark Wood is also going to attack at the start, that's probably the only reason he's missed out. But that's some serious player to have on your bench. Because I mean, I agree with what Gautam's saying. You'd rather have him in the 11. It's just whether you can find a place for him, and they've perhaps looked at options who are going to bowl towards the end of the innings, and maybe he's not one of their frontline options.
Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about the West Indies batting. They're going to be batting first now. We talk about one alpha player here, Chris Gale. Might be his last T20 World Cup. Who knows? These things can keep changing for the West Indies. But as we look at how Chris Gale's done in T20 World Cups, we know he's probably one of the greatest players to have ever played the format. We go back to the inaugural edition. Gale's one of the survivors from 14 years back. He still finds relevance, Tom Moody, in T20 cricket, in franchise cricket, as well as in this West Indies side. What are you expecting from him batting at 3 in the West Indies? How would you like to see him bat in this otherwise star-studded power-hitting lineup?
Look, I think the first point to make is I think there's more to Chris Gale and his input to a team than what's happening on the field. I think Pollard and the team itself and the management like Gale, the presence of Gale, I think he gives them a lot of belief. He gives them a lot of confidence, and he is the Bradman of T20 cricket. So I think that's an important point to make first. Secondly, I think what they're expecting from Gale is, look, he's not going to be blistering between the wickets. He's not going to be running any, threes out there. But what they expect is his smarts around how to sort of navigate those power play overs and to get the team set up well. Yes, we won't probably see the vintage of Gale where we're having a strike rate of 160 plus, but what we might see is a more subdued, 130 to 140 strike rate, but a bit of consistency. And I think that's what they're looking for. And the West Indies know they've got depth, so they can afford to have Gale as the presence and the leader that he is, both on and off the field, and maybe just obviously a slightly toned down version of what we're so used to seeing throughout his career.
We have seen the effect of Gale or the impact of Gale beyond batting. Gautam last year for the Punjab Kings came in and just seemed to make the side feel better, turn their fortunes around. Still good enough to play as a batter as well, though, in your team?
No, I would have gone with Roston Chase because he was absolutely horribly out of form in this IPL. Yes, sometimes when you play such kind of a tournament, you got to take those ruthless decisions, tough decisions as well. I would have gone with Shimron Hetmar at number 3 and Roston Chase at number 4. Gives me that extra bowling option of another spinner, because I don't see Chris, to be honest. Yes, he can still deliver, but I don't see with the kind of form he was in, even during the warm-up games, makes any sense for me to make him bat at number 3. If Chris plays, he has to open the batting. If he can't open the batting, then he doesn't fit in the playing 11.
I love it. Tom Moody's built it up. Gautam Gambhir's gone the completely opposite way. So let's Ajit Agarkar split
No,
split the
I
difference,
said
Ajit.
that if Chris has to play, he has
Yes,
to open the batting. I said exactly the
yeah,
same when
fair enough.
he was with Punjab Kings as well. I said that Punjab Kings probably are making the biggest mistake, that if you put him in the playing 11, you got to make him open the batting. And the same goes with
Yeah.
West Indies as well.
All right. Interesting. Ajit, split the
Yeah, I'm
difference.
actually with. I'm a bit surprised. The one thing is they're playing him because now they've picked him, so they've got to play him, at least start with him. But his ideal position. That's why I said I don't know how he'll bat at number three. Whether he's going to come and try and smash it because he can't necessarily rotate. It might slow them down. We've seen sometimes the pitches have been a little bit difficult. So that number three slot then suddenly becomes, you don't want the momentum to be lost at that stage. So if he's not going to open, the the thing I understand though why they're starting with him. You can't have Chris Gale. Uh, I mean, I'm a bit surprised that he's still playing for the West Indies, but because of what he's done over the years, they still want him around the group. But I don't think he'll have. At least if I was there, there won't be too many chances for Chris Gale if he doesn't start firing immediately.
All right. Wow. Seems to be a bit of pressure there on Chris Gale to get this right first up. What about England on the other hand? Let's just discuss England's bowling options. Owen Morgan, the captain. Now, Tom Moody made an interesting out of the box prediction ahead of this tournament. He said we might just see a number of captains, more than one, find their way out of the playing 11 just purely on form. What about Owen Morgan then, Tom? What we see of the IPL? Absolutely dreadful IPL with the bat, absolutely sensational IPL tactically and as a leader. What happens from here?
Well, I think Owen Morgan needs to find runs. It's simple as that. You can't just be selected as a captain. He's a very, very fine captain, and he has been for many, many years, hugely respected in England and throughout the world with his captaincy. He'll be desperate for runs. England need him in the playing 11, and there's no surprise that he's obviously starting. But in the first 2 to 3 games, he'll be very, very keen, and the team very, very, very keen for him to get his campaign up and running. He's a good enough player to be able to do it, and he's done it before. So it's just a case of him taking those opportunities. And I think he needs to have that approach where, he's just got to throw caution to the wind, just go after the bowling and just trust his eye and trust his game.
It's an unfriendly position to bat, Gautam, for someone who's trying to find form. If Moeen Ali is to bat above him, Morgan could be batting as low as 7. It's going to be hard to find form. You're almost always going to be batting under pressure.
Spot on. You've answered your own question that he needs to first bat to score runs. You can't get runs sitting in the dugout. And what he's done in the previous IPL or the last IPL was he was batting at number 7, number 8 for KKR. You don't get runs when you're in the dugout. Go bat at number 4. Lead from the front. So what if you don't score runs? Some of the best players haven't got runs, so it's fine. David Warner is going through the same kind of a patch. You can go through the same kind of a patch as well. At least show that intent that you want to go out there and be as aggressive as you can be. I spoke the same thing about David Warner. It can't go worse than what it is going at the moment. You can only go higher from here. But at least you need to go out and be brave enough to bat at number 4. Probably that's the only way you can come back into form. Rather than keep pushing yourself down and batting at number 7 or number 6 makes no sense for me because you're only putting yourself under even more pressure, especially when you're chasing.
It's such a tricky one, though, Ajit, isn't it? You have other guys who are in better batting form. You're always going to be tempted to make cash in on their batting form. And then the answer to your questions or your problems still remains. Owen Morgan, the batter, still doesn't get the opportunity to find form.
That's true. I mean, I'd probably look at it other way. Just sort of maybe not push yourself down 7 and 8, but maybe just go and just try and go for it. The situation whenever there is, I I understand what Gautam's saying, that you may as well spend more time at the pitch to get that form back, but you don't want that at the cost of your team. So you may as well put yourself in a situation where you just have to go and tee off. Uh, who knows, that might be the way to get some sort of hitting form back, but it's a tough one. He's been in dreadful form. So whichever way it is, he's got to trust himself, and because he's done it at this level, it's not as if it's a new player who's going through a rough patch who doesn't quite know how to come out of it. England will need his runs at some stage in this competition, and if he doesn't get back to some sort of form, then might be a little bit of trouble, especially at the number that he bats.
I'm trying to think, will they, Tom? Will England really need his runs? Or can you readjust your expectations of Morgan in this team and say, you're at best going to have 7 and 8 ball innings in the course of these 4 to 5 games? Maybe on a good day, you won't even get to bat. So it's okay. We don't need to worry so much about you getting runs.
the other thing to look at it is also is just look at what a contribution means and where he can make that contribution. Yes, we know he can make the contribution as a captain. That's a no-brainer. He's a superb captain. But he can also make a contribution with getting 10 off 5 balls or 15 off 9 balls. Those type of small contributions that come down the order. So instead of setting, your stall out to thinking, okay, I need to get a 50 or I need to get a 40 off 20 balls, maybe he just needs to slightly readjust his role and look at what's important. What's important is his leadership. And there's clearly other players in that lineup that are in form. He can fit in and play those little cameos where he can get a quick fire, 15 or 20, or even if it's a 10 off 3 or 4 balls. Those little contributions make significant difference to either run chases or just putting the icing on the cake with setting a total.
All right, now I'm going to ask for predictions again. 170 is wildly optimistic from what we saw in the first game, but we have some news that Moeen Ali has walked out to open the batting. Let's get thoughts on that. England are throwing in a few surprises early on. Gautam Gambhir, like it?
So, isn't England bowling first?
Sorry,
bowling.
Moeen's having a bowl first. Sorry. Leave that out. Come on, let's leave that sentence out. It's been a long day watching that Australia-South Africa game. Let's just get a prediction and wrap it
Probably a
up.
painful one as well.
What numbers are we looking at, Gautam? Are we looking at the West Indies batting and therefore 180, 190? What are we looking?
Look, West Indians are so unpredictable. They can actually go on to get even 200, and they can actually bundle out for 120 as well. So it's very difficult to predict West Indies. But I would still think that they will manage to get 160.
Tom, still on the 160 brigade?
I'm saying 172.
Oh, that's oddly specific. Brilliant, Ajit.
Yeah, I mean, I would think with their bowling, they'll need something over 170. You want me to specify a number? 176 then. May as well go for it.
You've started a nice little trend here. If we get 172, 176, I'll be worried
Specific.
about it too. Let's
But
pick up the chat.
I can say 161, but there'll be a run out of the last ball. So they'll finish off at 160.
You guys are having fun now. Brilliant. That's what the T20 World Cup should be. Tom Moody, Ajit, Agarkar, Gautam Gambhir. Let's chat in 20 overs time on Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout powered by Dell. England's record against the West Indies in the history of this tournament is absolutely abysmal. They're yet to win one. They've lost 5 out of 5. So let's see if that changes today. First, let's see how many they can keep the West Indies down to.
Watch more, feel more. Dell.